Welcome back. Joining us now is the President and CEO of the Bay Area Council, Jim Wunderman. And this is, we appreciate you coming back because you were one of our first guests. Things have changed a little bit since you were here. I want to talk about this important conference you sponsored yesterday. We read more and more now that there are people on the left in San Francisco that are proud of the fact that they've exacted a moratorium on housing, especially market rate housing in the eastern side of the city. And yet I matched that with a recent report that says one of the reasons why the region may actually begin to decline is because of the lack of housing. Doesn't that frustrate you when you see a major city as part of the Bay Area going the opposite direction of what the economists are saying are necessary to keep the region strong?
Well, housing is probably the biggest problem that grips the future of our region. Our median home prices are now about $700,000 in the Bay Area, and several times as much than it is in other regions around the country. Now, the Bay Area offers benefits that other regions don't have. Quality of life that's superior to certainly most, if not all. The greatest research institutions, which are the engines which produce an economy that's different than other places, knowledge-based economy, which is the envy of other places. But companies are having terrific problems with their recruitment at this point. They can't move people around. They can't get people from other places. It's really quite serious.
And your organization is, indeed, the group. It's a group of the largest employers. How many are there?
About 200, a little over 200 of the
top
major
200.
employers. Yeah.
And so you do a survey, which you sometimes force me to fill out through emails.
I don't force you.
Your organization
I
sends,
you.
and they never stop the emails till I do it. And I put that you ask questions like, am I going to hire her? Do I think the economy is going to be strong? Based on that survey, housing and these kinds of problems with housing, and then traffic in a moment, is key.
Yeah. Amongst business leaders, housing is the #1 problem because they're really facing that in maintaining and developing their workforce. When we lost hundreds of thousands of jobs in the dot-com bust, I didn't worry as much about whether a problem at that time as much as what would the recovery be like. There would come a cycle when we would get better because of the benefits that we offer. But the housing prices are really impacting the recovery cycle in a way, and certainly for the future. Interestingly, the gross product of the Bay Area is now actually higher than it was at the top of the dot-com boom, and probably hit about $400 billion by the end of the year, if you can imagine. So it's higher now.
What's carrying it now?
Well, the quality of the product is very, very high-end product, and the quality of the workforce is very, very high. And so we're not able to attract the mid-level types of jobs and blue-collar jobs that we had at one time in the region. But what we are doing is we're producing levels of innovation and entrepreneurialism which are really not seen virtually anywhere else.
Well, then isn't that kind of contradictory? Is it possible, when the Bay Area Economic Forum warned about the housing, is it possible that the character of the Bay Area will be just that? It will be an area, a Bay Area of rather high-end employees and high-end employers producing high-end products, and that housing, high-end housing, is just part of that formula? Or can we sustain that growth without really
the sustainability is really the key issue. I mean, that's what's happening now. And so on the good end is we're the envy of the country and the world, many of the important regions of the world, because people are, the leaders, economic development leaders, are really looking for these knowledge-based industries that we have here, like biotech and nanotechnology, as the future. However, on the other hand, the really questions of sustainability if you lose your entire middle class, and over time that's what's happening. We're beginning to see that. And so something needs to be done about this, and the solution we've said for a long time, because this problem is not new, it's growing, is that we need to develop housing in a quantity that equals the number of jobs that are produced, the jobs-housing balance, and you need to do it on a regional and sub-regional basis. That's not happening, and the moratorium, the effective moratorium that San Francisco just put in place, is anathema to what we're trying to do, because the choices that you make are you either produce the housing in the urban areas, which are supported by the infrastructure like the BART system in Muni and that you've already paid for, or you build it out in the green fields and the farm areas, really bad for the environment. And that's what's happening because that's where people can go and have an affordable lifestyle. But the price of that lifestyle is 2 and 2.5 hour commutes pollution that results from those commutes. And really, when people show up to work, they're not too happy because they've been through hell. So in a sense, what we really need to do is...
Got a lot of grouchy workforce then.
Yeah. We can fix this if the local governments are willing to wake up, and there's some progress being made in a lot of places. And up until this moratorium, I think in San Francisco...
It was remarkable.
But yeah, really
We were
it's
headed
shocking.
for the first... I mean, you were, for those of our viewers who don't remember, you were the chief of staff for a mayor of San Francisco. You know that the city was producing maybe 1,000, 1,500 new units a year, and here was the opportunity, and by the way, it will come back in my opinion, 10,000, 15,000 units, a real contribution to what was the responsibility. Would you go back to that nexus between sprawl and restrictive housing measures like the ones we're seeing from the Board of Supervisors?
Well, essentially, you have several urbanized areas in the Bay Area, like San Francisco, like the downtown, most of Oakland, certainly San Jose, which has invested a lot in transportation infrastructure. Those places can really support a much denser infill kind of development, and it can happen without changing significantly the character of those places, as opposed to the suburban communities, which kind of got away from us in the development pattern that occurred. So they took on a suburban type, and it's very hard to convince those communities to change. And then you go out into the valleys and so forth, and you've got open space and green fields and farmland, and those you really like not to repeat the suburban sprawl mistake, and you could avoid it, but you can only avoid it if you are able to produce the infill housing. And we started to make some progress in some of these places. Jerry Brown committed to build 10,000 units as mayor of Oakland. He's well on his way to doing that. Ron Gonzalez in San Jose, has done a great job, and Gavin Newsom with his commitments. This action by the Board of Supervisors to stop a project, which then had the result of basically stopping all development on the east side of the city until the so-called studies can occur, and then the lawsuits that come on the heels of the studies and so forth. What developers say is, hey, I won't propose any project here because I can't sit on the land. We'll go elsewhere, and that's where you get those same developers saying it's safer to develop in an area where there's less opposition because the farmland has very little tendency to oppose.
We had one of the leading leasing brokers on from BT Commercial 2 weeks ago, and I had Mr. Falk from the Chamber, and I asked the same question. These kinds of policies we're seeing coming from the board, which you saw also, the board's been noted for this, are they affecting the possibility of new businesses coming to San Francisco or business expanding in San Francisco? I mean, is this just child's play that people in business ignore, or does it get to the point where they say, we're not going to do business in San Francisco? And you have some of the large employers, many of whom used to be in San Francisco are now in the East Bay and elsewhere.
Well, I think there's natural growth and change that takes place within a community, and that particularly affects small business. And I think it hurts small business a lot, these kinds of policies, when that natural growth is stunted by artificial regulation like this. As far as large business goes in San Francisco, San Francisco can actually handle, because the infrastructure is in place largely through the BART system and Caltrain, it can actually handle an inflow from the suburban communities. So it doesn't necessarily stop the larger businesses from being here, but it does create additional commutes into the suburbs to some degree, and that's probably not the most desirable outcome.
The region as a region is an identity. Well, first of all, it's a reality. Okay, we know there is a region, and the Bay is deceptive. But is the region thinking like a region and competing as a region? Your organization and you yourself may be the only official representative of this thing called the region, but is it really balkanized, still balkanized?
Well, we officially represent the business community in the region that recognizes that the quality of life and the economy of the region are important for everybody. And so we've been trying for over 60 years now to bring together a balkanized region, to go through certain types of planning together, because some things just can't be handled at the local level, like transportation. It's interconnecting by nature, and so you really want to be able to do that. Energy policy, water policy, to a degree education policy, and certainly housing and land use, maybe most importantly. And so we have been successful in creating some regional agencies like the Metropolitan Transportation Committee, like BART, and other organizations, which are trying to get their arms around this issue of how to work together better. Historically, you create these agencies and then they don't speak to each other much, but it's getting a little bit better.
Your organization did basically help germinate and create some of these organizations, but what I meant is, does anyone speak for the region and compete, make us competitive and market the region as a region, or is it still pretty much up to cities to do it, companies to do it, and the best you can do is play a secondary role?
There's really not much of a marketing program in the Bay Area, and I think a lot of that has become, we may be victims of our own success in that way. This is a region that's historically been a great performer. And so now, with global pressures, it's incumbent upon regions to be able to assert themselves, and that's how particularly large businesses, but I think the economy kind of looks at places as in terms of regions, not so much cities.
So are you doing that?
We don't really do it. We don't have the resources to do it. There's not the momentum to do it, but we've talked about it, and I think at some point we may do it. But what happens is our region is rebounding now to the point where folks will say, well, we don't really need to do this, and if we market too much, it might increase traffic, raise the housing prices even more.
We only have, only a couple more minutes. You had an important conference this week. What did you personally think were the most important either speeches or discussions that came out of this conference in San Jose, and you can tell us quickly about what that is.
We have, every year we have an Outlook conference. Yesterday was in San Jose. We move it around the region. We had Janet Yellen, the CEO of the San Francisco Federal Reserve, Mark Hurd, the CEO of Hewlett-Packard. We had a panel of each leader representing the state legislature. So Don Parada and Dick Ackerman from the Senate, Democrat, Republican, Fabian Nunez and Kevin McCarthy from the Assembly. They I think, to answer your question, they agreed as a group that an infrastructure package for California is indeed in the offing, and that they're going to reach agreement on a package that is going to focus on transportation, the repair of the levees, and education, repair and development of new schools. And so that's very good news, and we were pleased to hear a group of people who often don't agree, Republicans and Democrats, Senate and Assembly, really come together on this. And then we had Governor Schwarzenegger speak after them, and he iced the cake by saying he's very confident that something will come. So we feel good that all of this pressure, largely from groups like ours who've been screaming about infrastructure for a long time on deaf ears, suddenly this discussion has come to the forefront because our leaders, constituencies from all walks of life from around the state are recognizing that generations of disinvestment in infrastructure has really become costly to our future.
In the last few seconds, so what do you think this compromise bond measure will mean for the Bay Area?
Well, I think it means that we will address some of our greatest infrastructure needs, where local governments have put up a lot of money, and even we've got federal money for certain major projects, freeway interchanges, transit projects. The state has been missing in action. So I think we'll be able to move ahead with the planned agenda for some of this.
And including the levy.
I think the levies is incredibly important, because if they go, the economy not only of our region but the whole state could go with them. I don't think people realize just how serious this problem is, but after they witness what happened in New Orleans, they
know it can't happen.
Yeah, it's really serious. It's something we need to attend to right away.
Appreciate your being here, Jim Wunderman.
Thanks.
Okay, and thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time. For program schedules, post-production notes, and free streaming video of select interviews, visit our website at www.sfunscripted.com.